friends, welcome back to another very special episode of the Film Alchemist Podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic.
Feels wrong.
I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my just like really not enjoying my party vibe wife and co-host.
Alex Dandino.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because it's like little M exclamation point, so it's like, mother! All right, guys, this is the first pod of the new year, a curation selected by one of our patrons, Edith, so we're super excited for this month. I think we'll probably call it New Year, New Me, please New Me. I don't know. We'll come up with a snappier theme. The pod struggle.
I do not know if I want any of these to be me.
But no, I think this is a curation that all focuses very heavily on, damn, I needs a change of scenery. It's January. I got to get my life back on track. That's what all four of these movies seem.
It's fair. Okay.
Before we dive into Mother, a little business, guys. It's official. We're on Patreon. The very month you're about to hear comes from us from one of our Highlander tier patrons. So, guys, it's patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. You can go over there. It's the best way to help the show out. It's the best way to make the show exactly what you want it to be and what you deserve it to be. For as little as $1 a month, guys, you get in, you help support the show. We assure you every single dollar helps and is appreciated. You meet our awesome Patreon community we're working on growing over there. As you climb the official Highlander tier ranking system, you get to select the specific films that you would like to hear us cover in a Patreon exclusive library. So, guys, it's an amazing way to get in tighter, to help us grow this into the behemoth of a show that it needs to be. You know, an idyllic house that we're just going to pack with looky-loos and zealots and terrible people. But it'll be fun as we all burn to the ground. That's what we're doing on Patreon. So, again, that's patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Every dollar is appreciated again. Thank you for those of us who are kind enough to send us your hard-earned money. Thank you for those of you who are about to as well. We promise in this new year we're going to be putting in a gargantuan amount of work to make it even more awesome. The email is filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. The YouTube, if you want to watch our faces react to the horror of these living situations we're about to talk about in January, is Film Alchemist. Again, over on YouTube, Film Alchemist. We're on all the socials. You're on all the socials. Get at us. And wherever you find the pod, something free and easy you can do to help us out that takes just a second, leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show. Make sure you invite your friends to do the same. Oh, right. God damn. That's all I could say. I was watching this movie, and about 50 times I just went, God damn, right? This is just a pretty little ditty, as the Red Hot Chili Peppers once said, of a film to fucking start the new year. We are talking, of course, about Darren Aronofsky's Mother, right? Like big energy at the end, little lowercase m. That seems to be important. I don't know that I've decided why.
I could burst your bubble and tell you, but go for it.
Yeah, there was a time in my life where I would have said Darren Aronofsky was my favorite filmmaker. I think he is one of the most incredible talents we have in the modern filmmaking pool. He just has a stunning array of weapons in his arsenal, right? I will say that when I left the theater after seeing Mother, my number one thought was, someone take that man's Bible. Get that thing away from him. Because this was Noah into Mother. And I was just begging someone to please God put his Bible under lock and key and let him get back to making different movies, right? This film is a mixed bag, right? There is a stunning level of craftsmanship in this film. And some of the segments are just mind-boggling, right? This is the kind of movie that you love when such a talented filmmaker is able to make such an idiosyncratic flick, right?
Right.
Very few filmmakers could have made this film, and very few of them could have made it this well. I will also say this film is an absolute Sharknado of mixed themes, metaphors, to the point where they are crashing into each other and obliterating any possible meaning that one could glean from them. It's as on the nose as any movie you've ever seen. I mean, the most on the nose thing I've seen in a film since killing killer clowns by touching their nose. That amount of on the nose. And it reeks of the student film from the just absolute douchiest faux intellectual guy you went to film school with, but made by some of the most talented people working in Hollywood. It's such a fucking mixed bag. I thought it was really fun to revisit and get back in. This was only the second time I'd seen it. So it was interesting to go back in knowing what I knew and retaking this journey, man. What did you make of Mother?
I actually have a really interesting story of the first time I watched Mother. Andrea was 6 months pregnant, and she was like, "Let's watch Mother." Like, it was our, for some reason, like we ordered a pizza. We were like, "Yeah, let's have a date night thing, you know? Let's just chill out, watch a movie." I had to pause this in the middle of it and like take about a 20-minute breather before I finished it the first time.
Go outside and have an old Ed Harris coffee smoke. You're like, what am I watching?
Legitimately had to like pause it to like come down from the fear. Again, when we get into it, you'll know why, because
I like to imagine you like on your porch having a ciggy, playing actual "Come Down" by Bush. I don't want to come back down from Mother.
It was just one of those really weird. It was one of those things.
What did Andrea think though? She was the mommy to be. Was she digging it?
I mean, we both liked the movie. Like, I think this is the thing, is like that experience and that happening. Like, her being 6 months pregnant, like she was big enough where it was like obvious she was pregnant. We were watching this movie and like I had to pause it. I was the one who was like, I have to pause this. She was pretty okay. Obviously,
she's just like, this little bitch is the father of my child.
Kind of like, no,
out there having a ciggy contemplating.
Obviously, she's like obviously she was mildly traumatized, but at the end of the day, like it was. I mean, it is just like one of those things. I mean,
you know what's really funny? It's scarier watching it when you have had children for years, because you're like, God damn, if this is not the exact metaphor for what it's like to have children.
Yeah. Well,
this movie captures the horror of parenting.
This
perfectly.
Movie is like four different, like you were saying, like I don't know if it's necessarily a matter of like four different metaphors crashing into each other, because like you can decide. I think what's interesting about Mother, and I remember talking to you about this when it came out, was like you can decide what you want to glean from it. Like, yeah, it could be this biblical allegory, it could be environmental.
That part is non-negotiable. Like, that part is foisted right upon you, right?
No.
The Christian mythology at the core of this opening is so paint by numbers.
But see, anything that Darren Aronofsky does has biblical allegory to it. Like, I've never watched a movie of his that doesn't have something like that. But like that to me is like at this point in his career, like surface level stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, like there's this. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence even like someone asked Jennifer Lawrence what the movie was about, and she was like, "Oh, it's about It's environmental. It's an environmental take."
Yeah.
I was like, okay, cool. I have actually always thought of it as what is the actual creative process. Like, I've always thought it was Darren Aronofsky talking about what it's like to be Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit
from the perspective of or being a creative person who has like people loving your work, but being that creative person's the movie. For me, I've always liked the interpretation that the movie is about being the creative force. The person who's a creative force in this world, being that person's partner, muse, whatever you want to take from it, because that's a more literal thing, but it also is like there's a lot of things you can draw from it, I think. I mean, there's also
they actually were together. So the idea that it's kind of like how Kevin Smith did in Chasing Amy, right? Like Joey Lawrence or Joey Adams, whatever her name is.
It's Joey Lauren Adams.
Yes, there you go. Some combination of the words I was trying to mumble. Well, I'm not the poet, as we all know here. I'm more of a run in and bash my brother with a doorknob type, but that's neither here nor there. He said that was his attempt to like kind of hash out things in their relationship through a script, right? The things he couldn't do like as a mature adult. And I think if you look at it like this, that Darren Aronofsky's the just shittiest partner ever. Javier Bardem.
No, absolutely. I think that's the thing.
Here's the thing. I agree with you to a point, right? I think there are many. and this is what I'm saying, I think there are many themes he's going for, and I think a lot of them crash into each other in ways that hurt all of them, right? Because again, the Christian mythology shit cannot be avoided, cannot be assuaged. You cannot talk yourself out of that being the core of this film, right? The Adam, and then there was Eve, the Garden of Eden, the apple, Cain and Abel, Jesus. Like, there's no fucking ignoring those elements of this film, right?
Right.
If you watch this with closed captioned at home, later when the first fan shows up of his one-page poem, he's literally called the Zealot, right? Like, there's no escaping that, right? And I think that this is going to sound mean. I don't mean it to sound mean. I think there is a childishness in which this movie approaches that narrative, right? I think the idea that, we'll just show a strange bed and breakfast version of the book of Genesis is dumb. Like, I think on a core level, I think that's a dumb idea that doesn't work. I think because it's so on the nose, it cannot really expand into the kind of symbolisms and deeper meaning it wants to, right? There are just things that happen in this film that are absolutely surreal and break time and break reality and break belief to the point where we know we're watching some kind of Salvador Dali, like, images as thought experiment vandalism, right? And that's fine. But I think when this kind of notion that this movie has a lot to say to me, I think is not the case.
I think that because it has multiple interpretations, that there are multiple interpretations available, to say that it doesn't have a lot to say to you might not be the experience of somebody else, is what I'm saying.
No, I mean, that's also true too. But I think if you watch this film,
I think that's what
just
makes
as
it worth watching.
I watch this as, kind of just, again, I don't like this terminology because I feel like people say this to cover up for bad storytelling, but tone poem, right? I look at this as like putting a punk rock sticker on a bathroom wall, right? This is kind of an assault on the senses and the mind and the actual medium of narrative storytelling. This is more about catching just glimpses of high emotion and high tension, right? And the movie does that part splendidly, but narratively,
right,
this film offers so little to me.
Right, and I mean, but that's also admitted on Aronofsky's behalf, anyways. Like,
I don't think that's what, because when he talks about it, right, the theory is that the core of the film is about this rape and pillage, I believe was the verbiage used, of Mother Nature, right?
Yes.
I think that tale done in this movie works more often than some of the other bits, right? The way that we absolutely trample Jennifer Lawrence and our planet is really easy to relate to and be empathetic with, right? Again, I think it's the Christian mythology part. Take this man's Bible. Take that Bible! I'm not taking all religion, but take that man's Bible because it's ruining his movies. The part where we're looking at, this is where it doesn't work for me, right? You put in God, right? God is Javier Bardem, right? His little office is the Garden of Eden, all this shit, right? The fact that we're doing God first loved the planet, I don't think that necessarily works, right? And then God unleashes us on the planet, so it's God's fault that we are not taking care of and pillaging Mother Earth. Like, that kind of stuff just does not ever link up in a way that is understandable in this film, right? Now, if she was supposed to represent more humanity than nature, I think I could agree. This might be a little kind of philosophical quibbling, but I don't know. Do you think that makes sense, right? The idea that God is responsible for what we're doing to her and the destruction of nature seems a little baffling to me.
And I think that that's a little, again, this is like highly philosophical, and that's not what this pod is, by the way. We are not.
How dare you, sir? Do you not see my doctorate of clownology right behind?
We are not philosophizers.
Do you think learned men don't have killer clowns and Nicolas Cage pillow shams behind them on their fucking stupid movie podcast? I'll tell you this. I think we put as much film into this, or thought into this film as Aronofsky did. Boom.
All right, cool. So anyways, we are not philosophizers by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that it takes obviously if you take the literal approach of like this being a Christian, about Christian mythology in a lot of ways, yes, like it falls apart pretty much immediately. I think that you have to take it much more in the sense of like, yes, like mother is Mother Earth, so to speak. God, and I mean, Javier Bardem's character of being God is also technically, because God is, look, I don't mean to shit on anyone's beliefs, but because we're talking about this, God is essentially a man-made conceit. It's the law. It's, you know, it's Christian law. You know, is whatever law you have on earth shall reign in heaven, so to speak. It's dogmatic principles. So, like for me, Javier Bardem and all of the acolytes, all the people that ended up showing up at the house, all sort of in a way become man itself, us. The people who would take advantage of the mother's hospitality, so to speak. I mean, that I think is probably more, that works better than just saying Javier Bardem being God. Because yes, obviously he writes this poem that all the people flock to. But again,
he gives his only son for, I mean, yeah.
Again, the Bible was also written by men. So, you know.
But see, if you talk to religious people, that's their loophole, right? Is that God essentially just fucking Pinocchio'd them and wrote the Bible himself through their hands, right? So they got the carpal tunnel.
No, that's what
and
prophets are supposed to do.
That's fine.
Right. But that's what prophets are supposed to do. If you're speaking to someone...
That sounded really shitty of me. I'm sorry.
Right, but that's not what... Right. Darren Aronofsky is not someone who believes that clearly. So he understands that the word of God is written through the voice of man, and therefore the voice of man is a representative of Javier Bardem, who is using the word of God to have people flock to him and essentially destroy the mother's house. Like, and that's the other thing
that
too. Is
part like, I love. I'm saying I think the Christian opening cripples some of the best parts of this film, right? The idea that he created Earth or nature somehow, right? And then this thing is set loose upon the planet and is destroying it, but he won't do anything because he wants to be worshipped by them, right? All right, that works a little better. The whole Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel shit at the start, it's funny because, again, it works as this kind of psychological thriller, right? Like if this was an M. Night Shyamalan movie, right? And they're like, this is a thought experiment on planet Zubadoo, right? And they're all like, the house is them in their cryo chamber, something like that. You'd be like, all right, sure, whatever. I think that because the tension that this film maintains, right? Like the emotional explosiveness that this film has, it sits heavy on you. And when it starts loosing itself, it is devastating, right? I mean, this movie really does hit you in the gut when it goes for it, right? I think some of those that just opening half of the film where it is doing this very kind of baby take on the book of Genesis just really throws me every time. And as they get to the part you're talking about, right, where Javier Bardem is just a guy in this film, right? Like, don't look at him as God, but look at him as this guy who is a creator, right? If you take the Christian mythology stuff out and you look at him as this guy, also I love the fact that he had such terrible writer's block and he's like, I did it. And it was like one page. That fucking cracked me up. I was like, if only, brother. Right? Like, but the fact that he does that and then his fans start to show up and the more he's willing to just give her, that stuff works supremely well. Right? I think that part of the film is where it starts to soar for me.
Again, personally, I prefer the interpretation that this is an exploration of the creative process in general. Like, but the creative process from the perspective of someone who has to watch someone who not necessarily sits on the sideline, but is the supporter of that person. So like if somebody becomes extremely successful and has all these people who all of a sudden start showing up in their lives, like what you're asking is that person to, hey, I am still the most important person in your life. Like, yes, it's an important thing that you've done, but like the creative process and then not necessarily even the process itself, but the things that come after it, and like the things that come after it that make it, quote unquote, make you famous, so to speak,
Yeah.
is what I think a lot, like the bulk of the middle of the movie is really about. Because
Yeah.
like that to me is like what ends up being, because all that's like once you're past like the Donald Gleason stuff, like once you're done with like the Cain and Abel shit, obviously, once like we get to that party they're having where that guy walks up to her and like hits on her, and then she's like, "No, I'm not interested," and he calls her the C word. But like that sink thing, that always gets me in that scene. Like the people who keep getting up on the sink, even though she's asked like 4 times, like, "Hey, stop! Like, don't get on the sink," and then they start like jumping on it, like, "Hey, it's okay, it's okay."
Yeah.
What it's like to me, that is like a really, again, like these metaphors are just out in the open, which I think is the thing. I'm fine with it. Like, I'm not looking for it. Like, this movie has like such interpretation available. Like, hidden meaning is such a waste of time. Like,
Well, I think what's nice about watching it the
Darren
second
Aronofsky
time,
could have put up a huge giant crucifix in the middle of one of those rooms and be like, "Cool, got it, thank you." Like, there's no.
I mean, he essentially did. But
there's
what
no.
I think is the benefit of the second watch is that you're not expecting it to be one of Aronofsky's great works. You're like, this is just a guy kind of having fun. And, I don't think he's doing a lot of deep work in this film, right? I think he is just really playing with this idea and some shit he wants to tweak with, right? It feels like a vignette series.
I think what you're seeing is someone who's wrestling through someone who has, let's see, what is the budget? $33 million. Someone who
obscene.
Someone had access to $30 million and was able to run it through like the gamut of their issues for an entire film, which I think is awesome.
And again, I will watch this movie. I would buy this movie if it meant that I could keep getting movies like this. Yeah. I think having your best filmmakers go out on a limb and make just this kind of weird bonker shit is so important in today's movie industry, right? I think that is important, and I'm going to say a lot of this I thought was not his best work. I appreciate the fact that this guy is making this movie, right? Because we do need that to exist.
I mean, for me, there are two things that first off, I can't believe I never noticed this. This is the second time I watched this movie. It does not have a score, which is really fascinating. And I think like it's the craft by which this movie's made that makes it so palatable. Because I think, like not even about like any other director. Like Aronofsky's the only one who could do this kind of movie. But I think any other crew, like any other director of photography, like it's Matty Lubatique, like any other director of photography, this movie just falls flat on its ass. Like he has always shot things like this, and he's this kind of exceptional director of photography who's able to do this, because that frenetic pacing, not everyone can do that. Like that's a really, really specific skill to be able to understand how you're supposed to move through a house that's essentially slowly getting more and more claustrophobic, and yet every single time we're seeing stuff, I don't feel like I'm seeing the same thing. Like the repetition of shot is so lacking because we're just moving through this, psychological mess so quickly. Like everybody that he surrounds himself with is so wonderful in what they're doing. Yeah, it's like a fabulous cast. I fucking forgot Kristen Wiig was in this movie. I was like, whoa, there's one on the scoreboard.
Her and Domhnall Gleeson both caught me off guard. I was like, oh fuck, I forgot about that, because they're kind of just in there quick.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. This is student film as done by Hollywood titans. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it's just on that alone, it is worth the watch, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where I'll always question these kind of movies, right? Because my gut reaction is when I'm watching a movie, I process it as, what is this movie and story trying to be, right? But just I think this is one of those rare ones where I pull back and just appreciate it as thought experiment, right? And I think this gets back to, like, we talk about the alchemy of filmmaking a lot. I think this one is so much less than the sum of its parts, but that doesn't mean that it's a failing movie or not worth your time, right?
Right.
Like, the people making this movie and all the elements are so much better on paper than I think this product ends up being. Because I think this is just a not unified and chaotic attempt to say something. And I think that had there were just little tweaks that could have been had that made this all feel like it had something to say, right? Because there are moments where you hear ideas and you see things coming through and you're like, holy shit, I would watch a movie about that. And you're like, I wish I'm watching a movie that's giving me like hints of a movie I'd rather be watching, but refuses to get into it. Because as you say, this is a movie that you just feel like you're on a water slide, right? Like you're getting splashed a little bit. It's kind of fun. And then you look down and you're like, Jesus Christ, I have another 20 seconds of this. Like, okay. You know, it's like there are twists and turns. And you're like, maybe someone's peeing on me and I don't even know it right now. Like, what's going on? But yeah, I think, all right, so let's try to get into a little bit more specifics, right? I think if we block this thing off a little.
Sure.
Right? So I think one of the things I don't love, again, the kind of, you know, here's your first trading book of the Bible segment, right? But I do think Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer crushed this shit. Like, watching these fours playing together is fucking wonderful. They're so good together, all of them. Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're all great. And again, like, it's a movie that functions really well on tension. And I think that, like, tension is really kind of the thing that carries you through the movie.
It overall is.
So, like, Jennifer Lawrence, so the mother continuously being accepting but contentious about people starting to invade her space a little more and a little more and a little more. Like, it starts with Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer and, like, oh my God, when she walks in on them fucking, like, that was like, or like that weird thing where, are they fucking? I can't.
No. What?
No?
Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer, when she's in her bra?
Am I misremembering it? Wow. I watched it like 2 days ago.
I know. No, but what Michelle Pfeiffer does, right?
Doing?
Ed Harris shows up, right? And he's essentially, this is one of the things that is baffling to me in the film, right? Is that he shows up and he's just like, oh, I was told there's a room I could rent here. Like, weird, okay. And as soon as Javier Bardem's just like, yeah, come on in. And we just keep learning that this is not what was presented to him. Definitely not what was presented to Mother.
Right.
But that Javier Bardem is just like, it's cool. It's fucking cool. I think every married guy, everyone who lives with someone else, you immediately have this this genetic lizard brain reaction to hating that, right?
Yeah.
And it's at your very core. I think one of the amazing feats of the film is that as soon as they start doing that, your brain is like, this is so stupid. They do no effort to make us believe that they would let this man stay in their home, right? And it's one of those, movie things where it's not afraid to remind you that this is a production and a thought experiment. This is not a real reality world.
I like that.
And the fact that they are able to maintain the tension of this scene and build upon it, knowing that none of these things are plausible actions by a human being, right? It's one of those things in most horror movies. A lot of complaints you hear from critics or people who don't like horror movies is the characters always make the dumbest choices.
Right.
And then you want to turn to their little art house, worshiping asses and be like, oh, yeah? Mother, right? Like, what are you talking about? Not one decision in this movie makes sense across the board. But it works in a wonderfully and mysterious way.
It's because it functions in this, from the very beginning. Like, it functions in this way, like, you're watching this movie and you're like, there's, like, never, like, there's, like, obviously this world is not real. Like, this is something that Darren Aronofsky does so much better than I think anyone else, is, like, this is the first time I've watched a movie, I guess Noah would be another one, but, like, this is the first time I've watched an Aronofsky movie where I'm like, there's no way this takes place in the real world. Like, not even fucking close.
It's the anti-wrestler.
Yeah. Oh, no. Like, 1,000%. Like, those live on completely opposite
Yes,
ends of the
he
spectrum.
literally hit the fucking two furthest extremes.
Like he's literally like documentary that I happen to have famous people in and mother. Exclamation point.
And that's the thing though, right? Is that this is a movie that's reminding you it's not realistic. So why would I, because even a movie like, let's say Star Wars, right? That's an unrealistic thing to be watching.
Right.
The characters themselves are engaged in realistic interplay, right? These characters are not, and it's stunning that I still care because Jennifer Lawrence becomes a fucking black hole of empathy. You cannot help but feel every bit of emotion that she is going through. And it's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think because she's the only one she's the only one who lives in the real world and within the spirit of the story. Like she's the only one who through most of the movie we're convinced is out of place. Like that to me is always how I've read it. Like everyone else lives in this fantasy world. She's the only one who seems to understand something's not right. So like that's where that empathy comes from. Is she is the rest of us going like, the fuck's going on in this movie? Like,
yeah,
she could be sitting next to us in the theater and be like, can you fucking believe this? I'm like, you're in it. What are you talking about? She's like, I know.
She's like, do you understand the yellow?
Do you understand what's going on? I don't know what's happening.
I don't know
what's happening either. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Like that to me is what makes her so empathetic. Is she's literally the audience and this mother character and all these other like again that's the black holeness is you're just like that is what takes us through is this like you want to just like jump through the screen and be like, I'm taking you out of here, this is fucked up. Like I am.
Do
like,
you need help? You need help. Let's go. I'm grabbing that doorknob. I'm killing her husband. Right.
Here's my here's my question. I wanted to ask you this. At what point? Because I know when I would have fucking lit that tanker and blown the house up.
Okay.
She waited a long time.
Yeah.
At what point? What's your last straw? Because I know what mine was.
When am I going full Wendy Torrance on this fucking hellhole? I mean, honest to God, the moment Ed Reed, the fucking famous football player. The moment Ed Harris comes in and is just like lighting his cigarette on my stove.
Absolutely.
Like,
Same thing.
Don't worry,
1000%.
Warden, I'm taking it outside. I'd be like, that's it! And I'm just turning on all the gas in the house.
Just
good luck
absolutely.
with your non-writing ass. And I'm blowing us all to hell. Yeah, I think that's what the movie does well for me, right? Is it feels like she has been foisted into like a Hitchcock movie.
Yeah.
Right? But like a dinner theater Hitchcock thing, right? Where it's like none of it is really making sense. It's not as good as the original, whatever. But what they do with her that is so funny, because in a movie that is so playing in this realm of on-the-nose metaphor, right? They have no interest in, giving us any touchstones.
No.
Everything she deals with, like the idea that she just turns in her kitchen and there's just lemonade fixins everywhere. Or she goes in the bathroom, they've just left like tissues everywhere. The visceral, seething human rage. I think
that is what gets me every time.
Yeah, when she's like, "Hey, don't go in his office," and she looks upstairs and she's just fucking traipsing her dumb ass in the office. Like the visceral rage of everyone who has lived anywhere, right? From the moment that you are blessed to have your own room, right? Which hopefully most everyone has gotten to experience. Even if it's just a small bedroom in your parents' house, right? The moment you had that tiny square, that oasis, this is that Garden of Eden, wonk, because God forbid we waste just an obvious metaphor. The moment you have that small space, you understand the protection of it, right? And Jennifer Lawrence's character is fixing this house up, right? She's making it a dream house, right, for them. And watching these people just come in and fucking disrespect it, and watching her partner be a son of a bitch and just keep piling on because, I like taking walks with this guy so he can fucking cough all over our house and bring his dumb, stupid wife to make fun of your panties. Like the visceral rage of these small house cleaning bits were a really good decision in a movie that I think needed more of them. I mean, this is just rocket fuel for anger.
Right. I mean, but that's like that's what this movie is doing, And that's what the tension building really is it's not this, like, again, it's strange because it's not building tension with narrative. Like, and like, that is, to me, you and I should be turning the movie off at that point. Like, I don't give a shit about any of this. Like, but because you feel that visceral torment from these people who, like, don't give a fucking shit about the house. And they're like not paying attention. I cannot stop thinking about that scene with the sink. That fucking pisses me off. Like, every single time.
Unbelievable.
Like, it is truly and honestly, even if they, like, and like just jumping on the sink, like, why are you doing that? Why would you even think that that's okay to do?
Well, then
like,
she just walks upstairs and there are two people that are about to fuck in her bedroom, right? These two young people. She comes downstairs. They're just fucking painting her house. And it's funny because in a movie where none of this can be real on any level, where Javier Bardem just spits some wordsmithing about this dead kid, and Ed Harris literally has the fucking screenwriting audacity to go, "Oh God," to God, and you just are in your mouth like I threw up a little bit in my mouth, but then it just cuts to something that works so wonderfully well.
This is what is amazing about this movie is, like, that should
I
be
agree.
that should be so fucking hacky. Like,
and it is,
but it works.
I think of it as
that is the true
I'm gonna spin you a metaphoric yarn, right? Because that's what we're here for. When I was in high school on the track team, right, we used to go after our meets and we'd go to a Rally's or Hardy. I think it was Hardee's, whichever one we had in the Midwest.
They
had like the 50-cent cheeseburger or whatever, right? So we would go and we would all get $10 worth, which was like 20 burgers, and see who could house the most, right? And I was just crushing all the time, right? I'm like, if you've ever eaten with me, I am a super fast and bottomless eater. It is like my worst power that I wish I could trade in for, like, liking the taste of vegetables, right? Neither here nor there. One time we're in the parking lot, and this guy was just tired of me winning, and he just said, "I got another dare for you, and here's $5 if you do it." And I was like, okay. It had rained out, so the pavement was all gross. You could see the oil slick chemicals, right? The rainbow effect. He threw his fucking cheeseburger down in an oil puddle, stomped on it, picked it up, and said, "If you eat this, I'll give you the $5." And I looked him dead in his eyes, and I just went, "Fuck you." And I housed that fucking burger. And I had no shame, and I got my $5, and who knows what it did to me. But I was set and determined, right? And
you should have had shame. That's gross.
I'll be honest. I got so into the reliving that emotion, I have no idea what I was trying to make as a point. But there you go. There you have it.
Well, I was about to say,
Aronofsky, I'm just going to throw out metaphors.
I was about to say that's awfully mother of you.
Yeah, I have no idea what the fuck that has to do with anything. Maybe I'll try to save myself. I literally just started retasting that fucking oil burger.
In the spirit of the movie, don't try to save yourself. Let it lie. Let it lie, man.
I also used to make money working at the movie theater by chugging large movie theater size, 44 ounces of movie theater butter. So, like, this is a repetitive, like, trauma of my life, right? Very much like unwanted house guests trying to fuck in my house and do all this shit. Anyways, I guess I'm saying my body's the house and the oil burger is Ed Harris or Javier. Neither here nor there.
Why are you trying to unpack this metaphor?
Yeah, no, when you get into the Christian mythology stuff and the movie's called Mother, I think you start to know exactly where this is going to end.
Right.
And I think maybe this is one of the sly tricks of the film is we know where this is going to go, right? I think we start to imagine that she is the house personified. Mm-hmm. We saw the very beginning, the burning woman. We start to get this hint pretty fucking early on that that's going to be her, whatever, right? We start to figure this out. I think knowing how bad this is going to be for her, knowing that her son is Jesus and is about to get got, in what feels like a not cool way, because everything in this movie is pretty much noise pollution, visual, right? It's visual noise pollution, if that makes sense, right? I think her having to suffer those minor housekeeping indignities is so much more impactful knowing how bad it's going to get for her.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because you're watching it and you're like, ugh, just... It's so inconsequential compared. But yet I'm so annoyed.
It's so inconsequential, but it's by the end of the film, I think it's the only thing that mattered to me. I will hold on to that rage and hatred for my whole life. You know what's really inconsequential? When the two brothers come in and are fighting over a will, and he kills him, and they just leave for like 10 minutes.
He
and
kills
she's
him
left
with a
alone.
doorknob that was clearly a rock. And
then God comes home. They fight and have sex on the stairs. If you want to talk about truly inconsequential filmmaking, that is a literal just fucking ball of plastic that you, like, you know, if you're making a fruit salad, that is the fucking display model plastic apple you just left in the bowl on accident and you have to chew on. It has nothing of value to add to the body cinema, right? But then we get to the next part that actually is pretty astounding to experience, right? And I think that is the ebb and flow of this film, right? I mean, I guess maybe by Cain, the first murderer,
I'm not going to lie.
They left you alone too. You do understand. And then he disappears.
I'm not gonna lie. The phrase "ebb and flow" is not the way I would picture. It's not the wording I'd use for Mother.
Mother's more of a constant flushing downward.
Yeah, but like from like a broken toilet. Like it's just
running all the time,
just running
sinking
nonstop.
you lower. Yeah. And again, I will reiterate, because it sounds like I'm only being negative. This movie should be imbibed by everyone. Everyone should experience this and support movies like this.
It is, I'll say this, it is one of the only times I have found art house cinema to be an event film. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it's one of those things, like, don't watch it alone. Like, I don't think you should watch it alone.
This movie is of the ilk of movies that are specifically designed for you to run to the bar after and talk about ad nauseum.
Because you need to talk to people about this movie.
Yes,
like, it's
I agree with that
kind of film. That is like watching it alone, I guess, is okay, but make sure that you can call someone to talk about it afterwards.
Or that you got two buddies with the greatest podcast in the world.
Or you
talk about eating oil burgies. It's fine.
But again, like, it's just one of those movies where, like, nothing happens, and yet everything happens. And,
so much happens.
But
so little means anything.
All seems inconsequential to a lot of it.
Because the movie literally ends with just a DJ Khaled and another one. We're back. It's like the fucking end of The Matrix when they're just like, will Neo be back? Probably. We're on the 37th, the one. And then Jennifer Lawrence has to suffer the house cleaning nightmare from hell all over again.
It's just
we'll get to that. That I got major beefs with, but that's fine.
I mean, it just ends. I mean, so this the baby thing is just never gonna be
okay, so let's pump our brakes here a bit, right? Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer come in and Michelle Pfeiffer just eyeballing her as Predator is fucking horrendous, right? Because she's the one who fucks everything up, but still treats Jennifer Lawrence like shit the entire movie. Watching her have all these people in her house, right? Nightmare fuel, right? We take this unnecessary break in the film. And we have the world's greatest orgasm. You're like, of course, God can sling it. Bright whites. We come back, pregnant, writing. It's all happening. The house has been revamped, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, to me, where the movie starts getting really fucking fun.
Yes.
So he writes his one page, his fucking poem, right? He gives it to her to read. And there's this really wonderful moment, right? Because it sounds like he has written the beginning of the Bible story, right? That there was nothing. At first there was a void. And then now there was this house and life and greenery, right? And he had brought her into existence, right? And us by proxy. I love that when she finishes reading it, she says, it's beautiful, right? And he looks at her and he's like, well, what else is going on? And she just says, does this mean I'm going to lose you now? And I thought that was fucking just a great line. What do you make of this kind of introduction to the poem and her reactions to it?
I mean, again, there are multiple interpretations. Biblically, I would say that is the if you're looking from a biblical allegory, that is the moment where man begins writing the Bible. The Old Testament is published, and that is where God and man leave the world behind, so to speak, and forge their own destiny in the worst of possible ways, or the best, depending on your interpretation. I think
if your interpretation is frack her, I want this house.
I mean, I think from a creative perspective, that's
Yes.
the moment where you achieve all that you've looked for achieving, and your accolades and your adoring public become part of your life. And that's when your significant other, your partner, whoever you're with that was with you before any of that
Yes.
happened, says, "Are you the same person?" Or
And not only that, though, right? Because remember the start of the film when she's like, ask him if he's writing or something. He says, the ideas aren't flowing. And she goes, they will. We see her nurturing him on this path. And then
Yes.
again, he's just an absolute fucking old jizzbag for the entire rest of the film. Just a useless gravy sock of a man for the rest of the film, right? Just terrible. But he sits there and just dong out. He writes this masterful poem. And I love the idea that she has done all of this, right, and is rooting for him. And in that moment, she knows that he is an absolute sack of shit, right? He literally just let the old, fucking Menendez family come running through the halls. And all of a sudden, she's like, this seems like a guy who's not down for me and the babe, right?
Yeah.
And she just kind of knows what's happening. She gets fancied up. She is making dinner, right? We have found out his publicist may have even read it before her. That was an extra deep knife in the ribs. Cool moment, right? When she makes dinner, he goes out. Some fucking creeps are there, right? There's that great scene where she's like, ah. And the fucking zealot's at the window. Can I see him?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're on the porch, right? She comes back out. There's a couple more. The zealot now stands beside him and not her. I think to your point, if you're looking at this as, this kind of like creative process kind of stuff, this is really strong visual work, right? I really like this segment of the movie a lot.
Yeah. This is the part of the movie that I think this is the part of the movie you show up to the movies for. Like, that is, again, it's the thing that's the most visually arresting. It's the part that is going to take you through to the extremely bitter end.
Yeah, well, I think the first part, too, is it's just there's not as much going on.
The first part
if you're
is
not interested in the Christian mythology, there's not a lot to latch your teeth on. And there's kind of like three segments,
I don't know
right?
if I agree
and
with
every
that.
consequential segment or sequential segment, I think it gets more. It is more broad to experiences that you would relate to. I feel like.
I feel like it's just. I mean, again, like it's just where this is. It's the part of this middle section of the movie is the part of the movie you can tell that this is the whole reason Aronofsky wanted to make this.
Yes,
like this is it.
That's a great way to say it. Yes,
and I think that's probably like the bookends of the beginning up to the brothers is very like. It's very like standard art house fare. Like you're waiting for that. Like you know that that's what the movie is going into. You're like, cool. It's when we get to this section with all these people starting to show up is when you're like, all right, this is like the heater that Aronofsky wants to like throw down the pipeline. He's like, this is what I want to do. This is like why I made this movie. Like this is the part you can tell he fucking loves about filmmaking. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool. And that shines through. Yet like there's still no actual plot to the movie. It's literally just like reactionary story.
This is when the visual pollution and the kind of just metaphorical assault pays off, right?
Yeah.
This is when I don't need the narrative. This movie makes me feel the cacophony of what it's like to live in the modern world in a way that so few movies capture, right? And this is the moment where I stop thinking of Jennifer Lawrence's nature, the Garden of Eden, whatever, and I start thinking about her as what's inside of us, right? How quickly we trample, how quickly we run to idols and put everything into others, and just watching her get fucking jostled and trampled through this just onslaught of assholes. Constant assholes. It feels like being on Twitter some days, right? It feels like seeing those fucking dipshits, protesting on a corner, right, with horrible signs and all this.
It's just the modern
fucking
world.
Unbearable. You feel like the baby inside of her, and you're just like, Jesus, can you stand up? Can you protect us? It's fucking horrible.
It's just the modern world, man. That's what it is. Like it is the progression. And again, you can go back to, rather than it being, I mean, it's interesting, like the biblical allegory really, instead of it being straight, again, like I was saying at the beginning, about it being about literally the Bible, the biblical allegory becomes much more about the word of God as it becomes interpreted through the world itself. Like, as you see, you know, people kill for it, people love for it, people do all these other things, and like the movement of the word itself through the world is what the house itself represents. Like that's why when like the police state, when the cops show up, holy shit.
Yeah, again, you're just felt like from another movie. So let's one of the things, to your point, I love the way you said that, right? The word spreading through the world, right? There is a segment where he's signing autographs and people are just stealing shit, right? I gotta, have something of his, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When she comes back, he touches this lady's face, and because ink had spilled on him, she's like, he marked me.
Yeah.
And then she runs around, right, some more through this chaos. She comes back, and now the zealot has won out, right? And he's got the poem on this big golden ornate thing, right? That's what him and Kristen Wiig started this riot over, right?
Yeah.
And now he's doing like the bang with the metal pole, and he's touching people, right? So you see the rituals metastasize, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was fucking brilliant. There's a scene later, right? So now it's a war zone and heads are getting shot off and Kristen Wiig is fucking executing people. It's fucking insanity. And you're like breathing hard, you're sweating, you feel like you're in this fucking house in this bit, and it's just breathtaking, right? There's a cool bit though when Javier Bardem kind of grabs her, right? And he's like, let's go. And they're running to the stairs, and the stairs have been made into this makeshift like fucking apocalypse platform.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that he goes, they'll keep us safe. And he has to reach up to the zealot to get access to protection. I thought that was a brilliant little visual sandwiched in here, right? Is that he's not like people don't care that he's the poet anymore because they care more about what he says the poet is and would say. And so he loses a little bit of power in that moment. I thought this is the payoff for everything this movie wanted to be.
I think he loses power over his words the minute, again, it's the same way art, it's the same way the word of God has worked, same way anything works, which is the minute it's out there, it becomes something else entirely. It's no longer your interpretation. You could say what it is all day long. This is a great example. Darren Aronofsky literally said, like, he was quoted saying, "How do you walk out of this movie and not give it an F?" Like, I literally made a movie of like punk rock music just throw in your face.
Yeah.
How do you review it any other way other than saying it sucks? And like, and that's literally
from kind of a douchey thing to say though.
Okay, but like,
that's him daring you.
Okay, well, hang on before you get into that one again. What I'm saying though is like, that's literally, that's the point right there is like, as soon as the man himself says like, this is what I meant to do with this movie, and yet we're sitting here talking about the multitude of interpretations you have for the content in this actual film, because quite frankly, there's a lot to be interpreted, but he says there's not. He's literally telling us, but there really is. Like, there's a lot. There's so much to unpack because, again, there's so much to be said. It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah. I think that's Aronofsky playing a card. I don't think he actually thinks.
All right, well, if you want to just bust my premise, that's fine too.
No. Here's the thing, though. I agree with your premise that I think he wanted to make this movie and said whatever. I don't think he honestly believes that people should walk out of this and think it's an F movie.
I don't think that either. But
he thinks he made a transcendent cinematic experience.
I was
neither here nor there.
I was mainly using it to make the point, but right, keep going.
I agree. I agree with your point. I really do. I think so. All of this madness, right, and insanity leads us up to the bedroom. They have this moment. This is my favorite beat in the film when she gives birth in the silent room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this wonderfully beautiful baby, right? And all this misery stops, right? The cacophony, the din of humanity fades away. We're sitting in this room with a happy mother and a happy father. He's so beautiful, right?
But then...
And she asks him, she's like, please tell them to leave, right? Please ask them to leave, right? And he asks to hold the baby. And he's like, they just want to see him. And she's pretty much like, you got to tell them to go. We have this child now. You have me. And he fucking essentially goes on a little diatribe and just says, I don't want them to go. All of the nightmares we have experienced in this film, right? The horny house destruction wake. The first murder, right? The fucking weird unwanted house guest. The revolution, the riots, the police violence. The police literally pepper spray God and Mother Nature in the face with fucking pepper spray, right? This is not a great scene. And he tells her in that moment of beauty, I do not want them to go. And I thought that was just a precise dagger strike of a moment. Loved this bit. What did you make of this segment of the film?
I mean, it's the proliferation of everybody's fear throughout the movie. Is like, it's not two against the world. It's this woman.
Yeah.
And like, he's been sucked in. He's drunk his own Kool-Aid, so to speak. Like, speaking like really plainly, it's very, like he wants to be part of the world. It's not a matter of like, it's not necessarily like Mother doesn't want to be a part of the world. It's that Mother doesn't want to be a part of that world. So for him to say, I don't want them to go, means he's fine with the way the world is, which I think is always the thing. Is you shouldn't be okay with how the world is. Like, the reason you bring children into this world is to leave it a better place. At least try to. I'm sure that's not the reason most people have kids. But within the context of Mother, that would be my interpretation of having a child. Is
I just didn't like sleep, and I wanted to buy more toys. That's why I had kids. No, but in that same phase, she's of course protective. She's very protective because she sees this she sees this otherness in his eyes. Like, that is that moment, right?
It's pretty horrifying.
She refuses, and he slowly, devastatingly pushes that chair up to her, and he sits like a fucking gargoyle, unblinking. And she sees she's running out of the food, right? Please just tell them to leave. Now he won't even acknowledge her presence, right? He just stares at her unwavering. And we watch her begin to sleep. She finally dozes off. She hears a cheer. And her baby's in the hallway, and he's holding the baby up to these fucking massive monsters that we've seen. That is one of the best horror movie beats I've ever seen in my entire life. Not including the sound effect and what comes after. But that dozing off bit, that's awesome. Perfection to me. You just don't make scenes stronger. Like, that is so fucking viscerally scary, that moment, right? And watching her just explode out, knowing she's exhausted and everything, trying to get her kid. I would argue the next two beats do nothing for me and are gratuitous for shock value's sake, right?
Yes.
The neck snap heard round the world. Just one of those things you're like, I'll never get that out of my brain. I don't know if that's for better or worse. I'm assuming just worse. When the people take the baby from Javier Bardem and he kind of half protests. There is a part of you that wonders if he wanted to give that baby away, if he only had the baby to mimic what Ed Harris's character went through. He gave his son, and he gives this speech, right? You feel like there's nothing to love. And then suddenly I think that's the moment he starts crafting this narrative, right? Anywho, so he's even more villainous, right? And as the baby goes and is just dead, right? She sees the altar with the carnage. And all these people crying, and they're like, that baby died on purpose for you, and this is his sound of life and love. And this is the moment of just orgasmic joy, is watching her finally have enough and just start John Wicking all the people in her vicinity, just stabbing the shit out of them. Because you're like, this isn't why that baby died. This isn't for you. You shouldn't mock his cries as if that's something. You fucking butchered this innocent, right? You have taken and destroyed, and that's all you know how to do. And you put these veneers on it, and we create poets in this world to excuse our barbarity and make us feel better about ourselves.
Right.
And it's wonderful to see her just have enough and start neck stabbing fools. Right?
Yes. That's what you want.
Yeah.
And you're just like, keep going.
And then
do the whole house.
As soon as we're as happy as we've been in the whole film, he just decides that we need to see her just get fucking beaten.
Beat down.
In close up, viscerally. Which is another thing I didn't feel like really added much to me. Like, I get it. I already felt like her life was terrible when people are breaking her house up. I could have done without that part. And then, we go through the, Javier Bardem comes in and feigns, how could you do this to her? How could you have done this? And then he has another devastating line, right? We can't let him die for nothing. After we all just watched him die for literally nothing. And again, to your point, I can't believe it took her this long to just blow all of them to hell.
Yeah. I mean, again, I would have, he has that fucking line, dude. And I was like, how is this the last straw? Like, again, I would have been gone the minute Ed Harris showed up. But like, she finally, and again, like, it goes into this incredible, this super tight, like, very, 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 very claustrophobic filming of like getting her down the stairs over to the tanker, like this whole thing. And again, like, for a movie that really like reconstructs constantly the space and your spatial awareness of what the house is, the basement itself is never in question. I think that's really fascinating. Like the geography. Well,
because at the end, that looks like a massive unending tunnel.
Yeah. But the basement itself is never in question. Like I'm curious the geography of the house in general, but that basement stays true. And that's always interesting to me because like that is the ultimate pit of despair. You're like, I have to fucking immolate myself to be done with this. And that is like, but I love that thing goes on forever, for infinity, because that's what that despair is. Like, you never get that back. You just watched your child die.
There's hell and the infinite void. That's what's in the basement, right?
That's it. That's the basement.
Just misery. And maybe that's just the lowest rung. Maybe that's what everything boils down to.
I think so too.
Our lives,
I mean, to be honest with you, hell is other people. So like, she's been living in hell the entire time. So
hell is a Sunday not on a beach with a Corona, am I right? And also unwanted house guest. Those are the two hells. They're next door to each other. They're juxtaposed, right? Tommy Bahama hell, and then everyone else's hell. Oh my God. I feel like guys that like Tommy Bahama would be stoked to have unwanted Airbnbers show up, but that's just my own theory. Yeah, no, I think it's wonderful, and she loses it and breaks the house and runs down there, and I love when she just tells him, you fucking threw it all away. You fucking did. And again, the payoffs are heavy on this part of the film, right? Because there's also something exceptionally brutal, intimately brutal of her blowing the house up, and he suffers not a scratch, not a cinder on his perfect white linen shirt, right?
Yeah.
As he carries her just fucking now crispy Gollum body. And she's just like, just fucking let me go. Just do it. And he starts talking to this fucking thing, right? And he's, I am I, and you were home, right? He's putting it on her, that it's her fucking fault that she gave up. He's fucking sack of shit. But then he does this great thing, right? Where, nothing is ever enough. He's like, I'm a creator. This is what I do, right? Nothing can ever be enough. Otherwise, I wouldn't create, man. This is all that it is. This is what I am. And it's just this, just fucking cutthroat way of saying exactly what we've seen the whole film, is that this woman, again, this is also a biblical thing, right? But if he's God, she could also be Lucifer, right? Having run in the basement. He was the favorite. He was the first created. He was the everything.
Right.
And just realized it would never be enough because God had this other thing he wanted to do more. Right. And watching Jennifer Lawrence's character tried to be the perfect mother, the perfect housewife, perfectly hospitable, create the house that would be their dream, their fucking ideal paradise forever. And this scene kind of rewrites the movie as we've seen it to let us know that she knew it would never be enough for him. And he knew it would never be enough for him, which again just adds salt to the wounds of these indignities she suffered.
I mean, it's
crushing.
It's crushing. It's also true of creative endeavors, true of the word of God itself throughout the world and throughout eternity. Like, it's a fascinating way to end a movie that, like, because the way that this goes is then she says take my heart.
Okay, now what did you make? I don't know that I love the idea that she said take it. It felt like it would have been more apt to have him just be a douche and take it himself because he doesn't care. I don't know that I liked her relenting like that.
Character-wise, I'm not sure what else she's got left in the tank.
I mean, I guess what you're saying is that it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe like one more spit in the eye, something, right? A little nut tap. It feels like maybe this is the movie trying to say, like, she really does just love him that much. That this guy being the old cum rag that he's been the whole movie.
I'm not sure.
Everyone still loves this guy.
I mean, for me,
she did all of this for him, even though he never cared.
For me, it's a matter of she originally did all this for him. Like, she did all this for him up until a point, and then he took it and ran with it and abused it and tore it down. Mm-hmm. Like, that's where we get to at the end of the movie. The reason for me that she says take it is truly like a matter of just relenting. Like, he's taken everything already. What's the point?
Do you think that a part of it could be that this is the true thing that she mothers? Is this rebirth cycle? That's what he pulls from her, and that is what then creates the world anew.
I'm not sure that seems a little hopeful for Aronofsky, in my opinion.
Yeah, there is something I don't love about the idea of her having to just keep doing this.
I think to get abused and abused and abused,
yeah,
that would be to me, it's just a matter. It's a relenting. It's like, you've already taken everything else. Take what's left.
And not only that, we know what he does with it, which is that he turns her fucking heart that was turned into a diamond by crushing pressure of despair into a fucking paperweight in his unlocked office.
Yeah. And then it just starts all over again.
I mean, it's just a kneecapping of an ending. You're like, God damn! You're just screaming at the fucking TV. And then to make matters worse, we end with Javier Bardem laughing. And it's just a real kicking the old dick of an ending of a film. But I think this is one of, again, for a movie like this, I think it captures really important emotional swaths of what it's like to be a human. And one of the things is our desperate need to make order out of the chaos and to create, and how our constant need to create means there will inevitably be constant destruction. And I think it just captures that kind of yearning that we all have, the fucking just pitiful desperation of us as a mass. It's not a very optimistic film at all about us as a species or our prospects moving forward, but I do think it in a way that very few films have captured what it's like to live right now, and probably ever. This feels like they somehow caught that on the film, and it was pretty. It was interesting to see it played back to you on that format, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, however you slice it, it's about the profundity of like modernization, but it's also about the constant need for approval from the masses, approval from from not just a creative perspective, but from a theological perspective as well. Like, it's about the abuse that we render onto the ones we love, but particularly the world we love. Yeah. We take advantage, and not only that, we take it all for granted. And not only that, but even after we've learned that we've taken it all for granted, we still don't quite learn our lesson, and we decide we're going to take it for granted again. Yeah.
We'll never be able to create anything, especially ourselves, that will be good enough for the one person we want to appease, which you can call that God or inner conscience, whatever, will never fucking be enough. Because if she was not enough in that film, right, as wife, partner, housemaker, mother, whatever, we got no hope, right? And so it's a really kind of sad fucking...
It's like you were saying. I mean, it's just this super collider of metaphors, or lack thereof in a lot of ways. And it's a huge... But, like, every time something hits, it's this explosion of filmmaking and this explosion of story. You're like, holy shit, like, this movie is really cool right now. And then it tampers down a little bit, and then there's another big flash. And, there's this movie has these moments. And again, like, it is not, the sum of its parts are much less interesting than the parts itself. So
yeah, but what I would say is the important thing about this, why I would say it separates itself from some of the more stereotypical kind of movies like this that we mock a lot, right? And often rightfully so. I think that at the very crystallized, hardened core of this film, it nails emotion properly. Yeah. And it draws your empathy in a way that usually movies that play as abstractly as this one do not
I think
achieve.
The most important part about this movie is that you care.
Yes.
The fact that I care the entire time, even though I have no idea what's going on, is what makes this movie worth watching, and why it stands head and shoulders above the rest of those types of movies that try to do this and fail miserably.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's it for lowercase mother with an exclamation point. Edith, thank you for the selection. We're ready to turn a new leaf with your curation this month. So coming up on Edith's curation, Alex, let me see if I have this right. We need to talk about Kevin. Should have done that earlier. Spoiler alert. Reservoir Dogs and A Clockwork Orange. So we have an amazing start to the new year. We have some really awesome films that will be dropping on our Patreon this month, including another curation, a Burt Reynolds curation from another patron. So stay tuned for all the madness. Join us at our Patreon. Guys, you can get in for as little as $1 a month, and we assure you we will do everything we can to make it worth your while. That is patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. The email is filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. The YouTube is Film Alchemist. We're on all the socials you're on. Please take a second and leave us a rating and review. Once again, thank you to our wonderful patron, Edith. Thank you guys for your time and doing this just bananas journey with us. We look forward to another astounding year here at the Film Alchemist Podcast. I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.